Coming up on Beyond the Playlist with J. Hammond C. Magnus Sellergren. With me on Beyond the Playlist is Magnus Sellergren. He is a composer and a musician and a graphic artist. Magnus, how you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. You?
I am fantastic. I'm really excited to talk to you. You're my first international interview, and I'm reaching across the ocean and interviewing people who do really creative things.
Cool.
So tell me a little bit about how you got into the music business.
Oh, that actually goes back to the 1980s with the whole punk rock thing, where you kind of encourage with the DIY spirit to start creating music on your own. I was a big fan of the Ramones and, well, American hardcore in general. So that's where I started out.
What was your first instrument?
Drums. I actually started out as a drummer, but then I moved on to guitar and kind of graduated to vocals as well.
Did you have any formal musical training, or was it just things you picked up on your own?
Well, not really, because with the Ramones, it was like three chords, so it wasn't that hard. I remember, like, maybe I was 13 or 14, going to the library and just going through a bunch of books and learning chords and then go on back home and start practicing.
What was the first song you learned how to play?
Oh, oh wow. I'm not too sure, but I would probably bet on something by the Ramones. Probably, most likely.
Well, that's good. At least you know where your roots are, at least.
Oh yeah, definitely.
How did you get into the graphic design part? Because it seems like what you do musically really does go hand in hand with what you're doing
Oh yeah. Oh
artistically.
yeah. Well, yeah. Same reason. Having bands. It was pretty much by default. No one else in the band wanted to do graphics, so I took it upon myself to do it, and that's the way I got started.
What was the name of your first band that you were in?
Oh, I don't remember. We had one that's so funny now when I hear it. It was called Puke and Explode.
Nice, nice. Was that
Jesus.
more of a?
Yeah, well,
That's
oh, it was a
funny.
punk rock band. Yeah, it was kind of juvenile but funny.
Oh yeah, well that's always the best names. Are the ones that when you first think of it, you're like, oh, we're going to offend everybody, and then later you look back and go, no, everyone was just laughing at us.
Yeah, probably.
With the music you do now, how do you describe it to people when they ask you?
Good question, because I really don't know. I try to stay away from a certain formula. I mean, I have my influences, and I think they're kind of obvious. But to be honest, I usually only go with instrumentals because it's kind of hard to um, put a label on it. I received a pretty good review last week, I think. They call it experimental. So, I don't know. Instrumentals, experimental kind of music, I guess.
It's a really throwback kind of sounding, and
Yeah,
it's very evocative of a certain type of emotion and a certain type of feeling that
yeah.
creates more of a time reference for people when they listen to it than anything else, which I find very refreshing. It seems everyone else is trying to push forward to new sonic areas, and it seems like you're reaching back and discovering the dusty corners of sonic areas people haven't looked in a while.
Yeah, well, it's just the stuff I love. I mean, I really like 60s R&B and B and soul and funk. I like those weird exotic albums, Moog records. pretty much everything. I just blend them all together.
Well, you definitely have a very specific sound that you've attached yourself to. Was that something that you took time to develop, or is that something you just kind of fell into?
Well, it's been a process. I would probably describe it more as a process because I can listen to every album I've done so far, and just like small steps going towards something. So I would say it's a process. I'm not. I don't. I'm not too sure how thought out it is.
Well, it's good that you're kind of just following instincts, because sometimes that
Yeah.
instinct is actually the fire of creativity that people actually sometimes ignore.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, follow your inspiration and damn the consequences.
Yeah, people will find you if you're doing good stuff, and that's the thing I'm learning.
Exactly, exactly. That was actually something I really respect about Motown Records. I think no, now I can't remember his name, of course. He always said that nothing can stop a good song,
Yeah, it's
and
very
that was
true.
kind of so.
Where do you nowadays? Do you have anyone you look to as inspiration?
You mean musically?
Uh huh.
Uh, I really do appreciate Queens of the Stone Age and their side project, Desert Sessions, because you can really tell they're creating music. They don't care about genres or anything like that. Just go ahead and create something. And I can't say I'm copying what they're doing, but I really respect their ethos.
Yeah, it's really nice when people are given the freedom to express themselves in the way they feel like they should, or in
Yeah,
the way they feel like they have to.
yeah, exactly.
Whatever that itch may be, they can just get out there and scratch it and not care if it sells 100,000 copies or two.
Sure.
When you record, do you use vintage instruments, or are you using modern technology to make yourself sound vintage?
It's a blend of both. So it also depends on a song per song. I don't like again. I don't have a certain formula.
When you first sit down and start writing a song, how do you start?
Oh, that that's also like a case by case. It's different. Sometimes I can just tweak a synthesizer and hear a sound that sounds just weird and start uh, dabbling with it. So it all depends. Again, I don't have a formula or any set rules for that.
Can you, I mean, when you're trying to evoke a mood with what you're
Yeah,
doing,
yeah.
is it a mood you felt and you're trying to recreate, or are you actually trying to create a mood from the ether, kind of?
Um, Good question. I think it's both. Usually, it's the first. I just have a certain feel I want to get out there, but sometimes it's the other way around.
I found you because of your work with the Adventures of Super 7 and Scott
Yeah,
Rhodes. How did you get
yep.
involved with that?
Pure coincidence. uh, I found they had a campaign on Indiegogo, and I really liked the concept because I'm a big fan of 60s stuff, like the original Batman series with Adam West. I love that one. And there was something about the imagery and everything. I just thought, I'm going to send him an email and hope for the best. And Robert replied, I think a day or two later on, and liked what I sent him. I sent him a couple of MP3s, by the way. So,
Well, what you've done has actually helped kind of set the mood for it, because it really does pin it down in a certain time period almost. You can have the costumes and the goofiness and the jokes and kind of the tongue in cheek. But once you apply
yeah,
the music that's being done, it actually does say, oh, we're doing a throwback to a far different kind of show.
cool.
And it really does kind of pin down a vibe and a mood for all of it.
Great. Well, then my job is done.
So how do you come about doing the imagery? Is it you just goof around on the internet looking for pictures you're going to kind of piece together? Or are you creating pieces? How does that work?
Oh, you mean the graphics?
Uh huh.
That's also there's no set formula. Sometimes it's collages, and sometimes it's 100% by hand. So it all differs.
I got to tell you, some of your album art is really quite distinctive, and it really is very evocative. The one you did for the, I can't even think of the name. It's the one that looks like a horror movie. It sounds like a horror movie.
Oh, do you mean the Italian
Yes,
fake soundtrack? Cool.
I love that piece of music. I put that on when I'm at work and let it just play in the background while I'm doing work. It's great.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So each album has a definite feel to it. Um,
Yeah.
how do you keep yourself from getting stuck in a rut?
Well, I guess I have like every time I'm finished with something, I make a conscious decision to do something that's completely different. Because, like I said, I don't have a set formula, and I want to keep things exciting for me as well. I don't want to repeat myself or get stuck in a certain genre or anything. I love the creative process, and that's my top priority.
Well, it seems like you might not be stuck in a rut musically, but it seems like you've really pinned yourself down into a time period, and you're kind of spreading yourself throughout that particular time period,
Yeah.
trying all the things that might have been available or possibly available to them that they just didn't know about, kind of, and you're kind of reintroducing people to a time where music was not quite as complicated, but still as interesting.
Oh, cool. I never thought about that, but thank you.
Well, yeah, it's very.
Well, but then again, I'm just showing my influences in some way or another. Like I have a vast amount of influences. I like to show them, so I guess that shines through.
It really does, and although that it's not instrument, it's all instrumental and there's no vocals. There really is quite an interesting way of going about saying things in it musically too, because it really does set moods. You evokes images. Your album art helps kind of put you in the right time, the mind frame to experience those things, and without saying
Yep.
a word, you kind of go through this journey with it. So it's very effective.
Cool. Thanks.
Well, most of the Greenhorn stuff is a solo project, right?
Yep.
Are you working with any bands right now? Do you still perform live? And
Not really. I spend what time I have. I prefer to spend it with Greenhorn. I was a member of the Norlis Tapes. That was a duo. We did the same thing and actually had a couple of tracks on Super 7. But right now I'm focusing on Greenhorn.
how do you know when of music is done as an instrumentalist?
Um, Good question. Um, I really don't know. um, it's kind of, you kind of get the feeling. Again, you got to follow your instinct, and somehow you just know. It's
What
really hard to explain, but you know when it's finished. You know, you listen to it a couple of times, and I'm done.
is it hard to not just keep adding in layers of things and ooh, here's a
Oh
sound I
yeah.
haven't used in a while? How do you keep yourself in that discipline so you don't just make it too complex and make it too thick and harder for the person to listen to?
Um, Good question. You're totally right. But I think that's a common beginner's mistake. You try to throw as much as possible into the mix, but then you start, shedding away stuff. So I really don't know. You kind of follow your gut feeling. But listening to some of the stuff I've done, I kind of feel like just a couple of songs, maybe two or three, where I did a bit too much. So
Well, I think everybody that creates is their own worst critic because
oh yeah, oh yeah,
they hear all the flaws and that no one else does. I played
oh yeah,
harmonica. I played harmonica in college, and I did a
cool.
few recordings, and I go back and listen to those recordings, and I can tell you exactly where I feel like I messed up. but
Yeah.
no one else listens to it thinks, oh, that's a screw up. They think I threw in some weird musical nuance that made me a genius.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like they say about the kitchen. What the customer doesn't notice, the chef gets away with.
Yes.
So, well, but of course, if you spend so much time working on it, you hear every nuance. But for people in general, I don't think they listen to music that way.
I,
Or other musicians don't listen to stuff that way. It's like,
I think that the age of critical listening, where people used to put on headphones and just turn off the lights and listen to things like they used to, is
yeah,
starting to fade because people are now listening to music more as a soundtrack to their lives, where it's playing in the background in their earphones while they're driving, while they're at work, and they're not taking the
yeah,
time to actually sit and consume a piece of music in the same method they used to.
yeah, I agree. Things have changed.
And also
That,
the art of the album from start to finish as a story is also fading away. We're going back to the days of the singles again.
yeah, oh, yeah. But I'm not too sure that's a bad thing because, like, going back to the 60s, the singles were the most important thing. I think albums, I guess the whole thing with albums being the main importance, it didn't happen back in the 70s. Up until then, it was like singles, singles, singles.
Yeah, it was bands that came along who were using that format to
Yeah,
create like an aural soundtrack or
yeah,
or something like that that made the single not quite as fashionable.
yeah.
Yep,
But I agree, it's a certain art sequencing your album. That's very important.
it is. It's extremely
Yeah, oh
important.
yeah,
I think
oh yeah,
that if you put the wrong song in the wrong spot, you can really have people drop out
oh
or
yeah,
not get interest soon enough.
exactly. I actually still, when I sequence my albums, I still think of it as a vinyl record with an A side and B side.
Yeah, I think that being able to stack something so in case people do listen to it from front to back, that they can still get the
Yep.
kind of experience that they kind of paid for.
Yeah,
Being an instrumentalist, you've got to understand the benefit to song length because I listen to instrumental pieces that are 15 minutes plus, and sometimes
uh-huh.
those are real hard to get through because they just get boring.
Yeah.
And as a songwriter, how do you keep not just yourself, but try to keep your audience interested in an instrumental piece?
Well, that kind of goes back to the Ramones, say what you have to say and do it like in 90 seconds. So uh, that's definitely my punk rock influence. Keep it short.
Has you do work in very short, kind of a short format. Nothing seems to clock in at over 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's a conscious decision then?
Well, I wouldn't say it's conscious, but again, we're talking about 20 years of making punk rock music. So
More of a habit.
yeah, sure.
How has the technology that's come about lately helped get you noticed by fans and get music out to your places where you never? I mean, frankly, you're talking to a guy in Salt Lake City now.
Yeah. I mean, the internet is an amazing thing. I mean, you can reach people all over. You can send out emails, promos. You can have your music online. And sometimes when I see the stats for my Bandcamp page, I'm just amazed. I mean, people in Singapore have heard my stuff. It's like, wow. So definitely technology is a big advantage.
So, what's of the albums you've done? What's the biggest seller you've got?
The Zombie album, the international horror community really, really liked that one. It's received some great press and everything. So definitely that one.
I actually have a friend who does a podcast called Forgotten Flicks, and he is a huge horror fan. And I sent
Yeah,
him the link to your Bandcamp page where that album's featured, and he
yeah,
really liked it too. So it definitely is one that is worth listening to and getting out there and supporting.
cool. Thanks for sharing the link, dude.
Oh yeah, no worries. Um, so do you have anything new in the works?
Yeah. Right now, I'm working, doing some more. Well, I did the title track for an Austrian director named John Brito. I'm not too sure how to pronounce his last name. He's doing a web series that's a horror themed web series, and I did the title track for that one, and I'm doing some incidental music as well. Plus, I'm creating sort of mixtape with a couple of songs for the Italian Horror Week that's in July. So that's what I'm currently working on right now.
Well, that's really cool. Of all
Yeah.
the things you've done, how do you classify them? Do you have someone that stands out as something like as a signature piece of yours, or is there, when people say what could I listen to get a real flavor of what you do, which one do you point them to?
Mm. Well, that depends on what music they like, because, like I said, every album is somewhat unique, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint. I have a couple of favorite tracks on every album, so it's kind of hard. I really can't. That depends on what they're into.
Kind of like picking kids.
Yeah.
Where can people find you and your music?
Well, the easiest way, everybody has Facebook these days, so just search Call Me Greenhorn and then we'll find my page and links to Spotify and Bandcamp and Deezer and whatnot.
I have to say that the ones I've really enjoyed are the Italian Horror and the Super Seven, and
Cool.
they,
Thanks.
they really capture a mood and a feel to what you were trying to
Yeah.
do, and those are the ones that stand out for me.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep, I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was great. The playlist for this episode is compiled from Magnus's Bandcamp page under the name Call Me Greenhorn. He has a lot of albums up out there, including his tribute to Italian horror. A song from there called The Prologue Grim Discovery is very good. He has another album called Cutthroats at Midnight, which the title track stands out to me. He has another album called The Ghost of Lee Van Cleef, and the title track to that is good. And this song from his new album, which is called Space Kitty 2000, it's called Simian Walk. For more Beyond the Playlist with Jay Hammond C, you can go to jhammondc.com. You can follow me on Twitter at jhammondc. You can email the show at jhammondc@gmail.com. If you like what you hear, you can join the Beyond the Playlist with Jay Hammond C Facebook page. You can subscribe and leave reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. And now, Beyond the Playlist with Jay Hammond C can be found on Alpha Geek Radio. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Playlist with Jay Hammond C.